हेलो दोस्तों एंड स्वागत है आपका स्लीपी क्लासेस के आज एक बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट लेक्चर में. Now, it is issues like these, news events like these, current affairs like these that really help you understand what I continuously say is the overlap within news, right? And this overlap that you have to continuously understand. You aren't just studying this for a specific subject or a subtopic, right? So you can't just confine a news that this I'm only going to be reading, say, for a certain optional, or that I'm only going to be reading for a certain GS paper, right? So, for example, in context today is the entire issue with respect to the Panchamasalis, right? The Panchamasalis now, who happen to be a subsect within the Lingayats, prominently in Karnataka, found in other states as well, states like Maharashtra and Telangana, but particularly in Karnataka, there have been ongoing protests now. Right now, not only are they relevant for GS, but they are also very importantly not just relevant for mains, but also for prelims, right? Because there are very important facts and factoids within this, which can often, because this is a topic which has been in news, right? Concerns, facts, issues regarding the same can come as straightforward questions within prelims as well, right? So whenever you're covering a news, cover the various facets of it so that no matter, you can derive the best out of it, right? So whatever input that you're putting, right, there's an input going, that you're looking at the information, you're storing it in your head, you want to get the best out of it, you want to get the maximum output out of it. And how can you get the maximum output out of it? By utilizing it not just for various phases of exam, but in various areas as well, right? So you can use these as examples, not just in your optional, you can use them in your essay, in social issues, in issues of ethics, right? So this is how in various areas you can see the spillover effects of current events, right? So now moving on, the first question that you should be asking is that who are the Panchamasalis, right? The people who are protesting, they have been in news, right? Who are these people, right? What is this community? Now, as stated before, the Panchamasalis are considered one of the largest subsect of the Lingayats, right? So Lingayats, you must have very prominently heard within the Bhakti movement, right? So within the Bhakti movement, these followers of this formless idea of Shiva, right, came to be known as Lingayats, and they rose to prominence under the leadership of the social reformer called Basavana in 12th century, right, adding to the entire idea of the Bhakti movement. Now, very importantly, you can also relate this movement within a certain political environment as well, right? Now, Basavana, in fact, was a treasurer, right? So he was very well acquainted to the royalty of the time. He was a treasurer in the court of King Bijala II. Now, very important factoid that you can remember as well, right? And what did he do? He rejected the overt Brahmanization that had come to occupy Hinduism, right, which was marked by rituals, very fancy and expensive things that you had to carry out, idol worship, temple worship. So you had to construct these fancy temples, and obviously when you have these fancy temples, the only route through them is through various priests who would often charge a lot, right? And then this would also limit the access to various sections of people. So those who came from the more backward sections of the society, because of lack of access to temples, right, they couldn't almost access God. And therefore, against all of this ritualization and Brahmanization, what he imagined was a society which was casteless, that did not have any discrimination, and very importantly, it also had an element of gender equality within it, right? Wherein it talked about equal opportunities for both men and women, which is very radical for even that time, right? So it was seen as an equalizing movement within the larger scope of the Bhakti movement as well. Now, what happens? This is the case, obviously, with most religions which have come up on notions of reforms, right? A lot of sects and movements that have come up on notions of reform, that while they start as reform, because India happens to be such a complex and complicated society, with time, there is a lot of soaking in of the discrimination, hierarchies that happen around them within these religions, within these sects as well, right? So you can look at Sikhism, you can look at Islam in India, right? As well as these sects which have talked about not talking about a caste or a hierarchy, and dheere dheere, right? So say for example in the case of Punjab, right, which has the highest density of scheduled castes, you have this new hierarchy emerging. Similarly, within Islam, we are now seeing protests by the subdued, by the subjugated sections of the society protesting for their own rights and reservations even there. Similar has been the case with Lingayats as well, right? Wherein as the sect evolved to the present time, there are over 99 subsects now within Lingayats, right? And there are various prominent sects, right? One of the most prominent is obviously the Panchamasalis. Then there's the Ganigas, the Jangammas, the Banjigas, Reddy Lingayats, and so on and so forth. Now, very importantly, one thing to note here is that because the idea of forming a sect, right, you get united by a sect because you have similar practices, right? You follow similar ideas, similar routines, similar practices, right? So why is it that these sects then emerge? So they say when it comes to practices and rituals, there is commonality, there is similarity all throughout these subsects, right? Whether it comes to births, weddings or deaths, right? So for example, amongst all sects of the Lingayats, one of the prominent practices that the dead are buried in sitting position. Very important to note here, right? Similarly, one of the markers of the Lingayat community, right, that they carry the Ishtalinga, right, the marker of Shiva, which is suspended in a silver box around their neck. So now if the practices are more or less common, what is it that differentiates them? The differentiation comes in the form of traditional occupations. So remember the Varna system? It was organized based on the occupations one follows. So now what happens is that the traditional occupations that the people followed and come to become a part of Lingayat, they could never let go of that identity, and based on the traditional occupation, now subsects started formulated. And that is why now within the Lingayats also a sort of order of prestige emerged, that which were certain groups or subsects. So here you can see that this has been taken from a government table itself, right? So sects like Hiremat, Chikamat, Ganachari, right, whose traditional occupation was that of priests, who occupied a much higher position compared to say the Panchamasali or the Panchamasali Totikas, who were agriculturalists or in gardening occupations and therefore placed lower, right? So this kind of hierarchy was a result of the traditional occupations that were followed by the various members. Now, why have the Panchamasalis been protesting? Very importantly, now they have been protesting, they are already within the Lingayat segment, which means that they already have quota. However, their current quota under the Karnataka government for the other backward castes is within what we call the category 3B. ठीक है, जहां पे they get 5% of quota in government jobs and education institutions. Instead, now what the Panchamasalis are saying, who happen to be, as we talked about, traditionally agriculturalists, right? They say that we are one of the largest in population, right? Almost 70% they claim of the Lingayats is us, but there's no empirical data really backing this, right? The talks of, the socio-economic survey which was conducted in Karnataka, but the data isn't really out in the public domain. So there is no empirical data which can really prove it. So they say we are a very huge population. However, when you look at our representation, whether it is political representation in the Legislative Assembly, whether it is our employment representation in higher offices, particularly in government jobs, or whether it is our educational representation, everywhere we haven't really been able to get the kind of benefits that we deserve within the Lingayat community. And that is why they are now pushing to be included within category 2A of the other backward classes quota, जिसके through instead of 5%, they would then get 15% reservation in government jobs and educational institutions, right? So now this is the main concern. Now, very importantly, right, this has been a growing idea. Kancha Ilaya, right? Scholars like Kancha Ilaya continuously say that they say that, you often question the idea of reservation. Is it the best way forward? But the fact remains that when it comes to socio-economic backwardness and dealing with historical injustices, it is one of the most convenient frameworks through which such socio-economic justice in some way or form can be ensured to members of various communities who have faced such discrimination. Now, this isn't something new. In fact, it has been going on for a number of years. In 2020, in fact, Panchamasalis pontiff, seer, noted leader, Basavaraj Jaya Mrutyunjaya Swami, he is the one who first led a statewide protest which led to a 600-kilometer march from Bagalkot to Bangalore. And again, the idea was better representation, more reservation. In 2023, now after the resigning of the past government, after the resigning of the past leader, the new leader who came into power in 2023, which was Basavaraj Bommai, right, who also happens to belong to the community, right? What did he do? He restructured Karnataka's OBC quota, wherein the 4% reservation, which was granted to Muslims under category 2B, it was done away with, and it was now reallocated equally 2% each to two very important and very politically powerful communities of Lingayats and Vocaligas under new categories of 2C and 2D. Now, this took up their reservation, right, for Vocaligas to 6% and for Lingayats to 7%. However, this did not satisfy the Panchamasali demand of being included in category 2A of the quota. Now, these are the way in which quotas functioned, right? So, this was what was in pre-existing the change of the Bommai government, right? The structuring in which the quota mix happened, and this was the change that they had come up with, doing away with the Muslim reservation and adding more for the Vocaligas and Lingayats. However, what happened was that Muslim petitioners took this to the Supreme Court, right? And they said that this was unfair. The manner in which it was carried out wasn't really constitutional. And the court also observed that the changes that were made in a very hasty manner. They were very flawed, right? After which what happened was that the Karnataka government, they actually provided an affidavit and they said that instead of this change, right, we will continue with whatever was existing, right? So now because of that, it has been, the situation has just been in doldrums. So this has never really taken effect, and this is what they have really continued with. Now this has also become a political storm, right? Because of the failure to deal with the demands of the community, who also happen to be because they have large numbers, they are a very important vote bank. Right? Because of this, they state that the BJP government ended up losing in Karnataka and the Congress ended up coming to power. However, again, their demands weren't really satisfied, which led to another protest by the Panchamasali community in Belgavi, which turned violent, right? And when they tried to really push through and barge into the assembly, into the Vidhan Saudha, what happened is that the police retaliated with a lathi charge. And now there are ongoing protests against the lathi charge as well. Right now, the question obviously stands is with respect to the effectiveness of these reservations, right? So, say for example, scholars like Pratap Bhanu Mehta, right? They have commented, right? They say that rather than providing for socio-economic justice or rather than, being a part to equality, all reservations have become is a tool for distributing the state's spoils. Right? So the state spoils that whoever they make happy, they can just they can just distribute those benefits amongst them. Right? Which is why they say rather than removing discrimination, they have further entrenched caste identities. Right? This is a major problem. Now, very importantly, people like Christopher Jaffelert have also pointed out to what is called the new middle class syndrome, right? Because we see an increased fight amongst various communities for reservation, right? Or within sects for more reservation as well, right? We've seen the Jat protests, we've seen the Pattidar protests. With respect to Pattidars, particularly the Pattidars and Patels, this is what he calls the new middle class syndrome. He says that they feel they have been left out, but because traditionally their communities weren't really involved in government jobs and education, and now they feel that they have missed the bus, right? And now because they have entered a scenario wherein there is lack of government jobs, there is lack of, there's paucity of educational seats in good education institutions, there's so much competition, there is more and more demand for reservation as well, right? Which is what makes this entire case so complicated. Right? Now, one more thing that you should remember as we've talked of Lingayats, another very important community is the Veerashaivas. What I want you guys to do is comment, is there a difference, and what is the difference between Lingayats and Veerashaivas, which is very, very important to note. Right? Now, before going, just to let you know that if you're still scared about your prelims preparation, we have a very important and comprehensive prelims crash course, which consists of not just our GS crash course live, GS test series for prelims. It also consists of CSAT crash course live plus CSAT test series. Plus, you also get personalized mentorship by all the faculties. So if you have any doubts, if you have any concerns, right, you can get personalized mentorship by all our GS and CSAT faculties, right? Very importantly, by using this discount code, you can get it at a price of 15,300. If this is something which is expensive for you, we also have our pocket courses, right? So single individual courses like GS crash course only or CSAT crash course only, or if you only want GS crash course and test series or only CSAT crash course and test series, that is also something which is available to you, and all of this is live. Very importantly, also for students who have covered, say, PSI or optional already, but are looking to cover current affairs, you can become a part of our current affairs course, which is now available for only rupees 6,000, right? सारी details आप दिए गए नंबर पे कॉल करके पूछ सकते हैं या फिर हमें मेल भी ड्रॉप कर सकते हैं, right? Last but not the least, if you're looking to practice answer writing, you can also become a part of our daily practice series, right? Write every day, right? Practice over 160 questions to ensure that when mains comes, you're already prepared with your optional answer writing, right? This was all from me today. Thank you and keep watching Sleepy Classes.